Welcome to Long Run Lactic, a running media concept devoted to cultivating, documenting, and curating the beauty of finding fitness. From the infancy of our first steps to the conquest of a race won, we all have a story to tell.
I'm your host, Bernard England, and today on the show is a very, very special guest, Cory McGee. Cory McGee was a multi-time All-American at the University of Florida, but in 2024, she celebrates 10 years as a professional with New Balance. And she still is undoubtedly one of the best 1,500-meter runners in the world, competing in multiple world championships, including last year's Budapest Games making the 1,500 final, and the 2021 Tokyo Olympic Games. But today, I'd like to give a special shout-out, as this episode will be airing on her wedding day. I personally want to wish Cory and PJ a happy, beautiful, prosperous life together. I couldn't be more honored to have met you both. So without further ado, let's get into it.
All right, we are here in very sunny Scottsdale. Very beautiful day with a very wonderful person. I'm just gonna say wonderful because there's many adjectives that I could give her right now. Ms. Cory McGee.
Here we are.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
We are nearing the end of our, or the end of your AZ camp. How's that?
It's been good. It's flown by, as
Team
many
Boss
training
camp.
camps do. We've been here for a few weeks, but I'm sad it's ending. I always love coming here.
I always love having you here and the rest of the boss squad, as they say. Shout out Joe, shout out the team boss. How's camp been from a training perspective? You're coming off of a very fun track season.
Yeah, camp's been good. I feel like I always look forward to winter camp because admittedly my fall is usually kind of all over the place. So I feel like it's when I finally feel like I've caught up to the group and feel like I'm actually back like training consistently. So winter camp is a necessity for me to kind of like get back into routine.
I feel that. So your fall, you had a lot of fun things outside of the running world in fall, because you've got a very fun thing coming up this March. So before we do anything, as much as I love you, I want to shout out and plug PJ very early on in this podcast. You've got a very special day on March 16th.
Yeah.
If you want to plug the ring, it's okay.
Yeah. I have my Band-Aid on that finger too, but yeah.
That's a New Balance Band-Aid that the people can't see.
Yeah, it's coming up quick.
How's planning going?
It's really good, yeah.
I was there to pick the dress out, and I'll say you look wonderful.
Thanks.
I'm the only one in the country that knows what the dress looks like, so just want to make sure I put that out there. But no, how's wedding planning? I know nothing about planning.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't understand why people were ever fussed about it before, but now I'm like, yeah, there are a lot of details. I mean, mostly you're just like spending a lot of money and you just want people to do a good job. So thankfully, yeah, I mean, PJ and I are happy and it's going great.
Where's the wedding?
It's in Santa Barbara.
Nice little Santa
Yeah,
Barbara.
it's coming up soon. We were just out there kind of like finishing everything, so.
You know what color your nails are going to be?
Not hot pink, probably.
It's the only detail I don't know. What's the hair like?
I can't tell.
Damn, I wanted a sneak peek. I wanted to plug that.
I don't know. Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. No plans.
All right, fair. I'm going to somehow get a pic and post it and make that the cover photo of the podcast. So, backstory. I know you decently well. We met at camp last year. Very wonderful person. Very thankful to have you here. Very thankful that Mama Shauna will be here soon. But what's backstory? I think part of the reason why I enjoy your presence is you're another East Coaster, but more of a Southern belle, as I call you, Mississippi.
Yeah.
How was Mississippi growing up as a Christian past Christian?
Past Christian.
How's that? What was running like there? Was running culture? Did you always know?
No running culture.
Not at all.
That doesn't exist.
How did you get into the sport?
When I was in, I guess my dad would run. He wasn't necessarily like someone who I think thought of himself as like a distance runner, but he would go out and run just to like stay in shape. And my older sister and I would tag along. And that was when I was probably like 8 years old on the beach in my hometown. And then when we moved abroad, I joined the cross country and track team at my school in Athens. And we realized kind of quickly that I was like pretty good at running. So I was racing the high schoolers and I was in 6th grade and I was just like, I loved it. So I was keeping up with the older kids and
prodigy at a very early age.
and like having competitive parents was helpful because they kind of recognized it and they knew how to like feed my competitive side just enough. Like a little bit of bribery, like if you win this race, we're going to get you, that I don't know if people remember the Baby G watches. That was like my first my first race. We went through the airport and I was like, I want that watch. My parents were like, well, win and you'll get it. And then, so they did like just enough of that kind of stuff to kind of like keep me into it and having fun, but also like make me want to win. So
yeah, the little competitive edge never hurts.
Yeah.
Now your father, he was extremely competitive. I had a chance to meet one of his friends. He's in the military, so that was your reason why you were in Athens.
Yeah.
So from Athens, you came back to Mississippi.
We moved back, yeah.
Okay.
So we were there for like a year and a half, but we lived in Mississippi before and after, but I grew up in Northern Virginia, like that's where I was born.
Okay.
So kind of all over, but yeah, so yeah.
That's exciting.
That's the story.
High school, more specifically your senior year, things got a little fast real quick. You got a chance to run at the Melrose Mile.
Yeah.
You got that dub. What is, as a runner that didn't look at themselves as a real runner early on, I think a lot of kids nowadays, they know in 4th and 5th grade, like, this will be my profession forever. If that wasn't for you, what was senior year like? I think I would imagine back then you got a lot of attention very quickly.
Oh gosh. I mean, it's funny because in the midst of like living in a place where running wasn't super popular, I did have a coach who was like very well versed in the sport, which was just like, honestly, he's like a guardian angel. Like, it was a huge blessing to meet someone who understood track. So my coach kind of did like make me aware of professional running when I was in high school, and that was my goal, which I think was kind of unusual. Like, I was just super focused on it from like a pretty early age. But if I wasn't doing that because of like having grown up like moving around and associated with the embassy and whatnot, like I did want to be an ambassador. That was like my
like
other,
a U.S. ambassador?
yeah. But then I also feel like I do that as a track athlete, like traveling on Team USA. So that was,
what about ambassadorship was like sexy to a teenager?
yeah, I mean, I think it was the traveling aspect and representing the US. Like, nothing makes my skin crawl than when I'm abroad and people like hate America. It makes me really sad. And so,
did you see that in Athens?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, my school was like people from all over the world, and yeah, I'm very proud to represent the US. So I think that I had this idea in my head, like, you know, I'm from a state that a lot of people have a hard time with.
Yeah.
I'm from a country that a lot of people have a hard time with, and like just kind of trying to like find community wherever you go and like defy some of those stereotypes, I think is really important. So,
not to jump too far ahead, but from your early to mid 2000s to now, you're still traveling, still competing, you're still going all over the world. In your ambassadorship role, do you feel, or do you see like different stigmas or different things that people say now about the U.S. that they said differently when you were a kid?
Oh no, I feel like it's still the same. And like there is a lot of truth, you know, there's truth in so many generalizations, but like trying to bring new truths to all that kind of stuff, I feel like is what we have to do. And I think that like track among all sports really does that, because it's such a, I don't know, it's such a melting pot of a sport. So anyway, yeah, I mean, it's still kind of the same stuff though, like gluttonous and loud and all that stuff. So
we ain't loud. What you mean? Not loud at all. So you got through senior year, a very successful senior year, I would say, for most individuals, and you got to go to a certain school. I'm not gonna say it because I feel like all of these people do this all the time.
I was gonna say it's gonna bring on a chomp.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say University of Florida.
Yeah, go Gators.
You can do it. It's okay. If you don't do it now, someone's gonna jump in the comments and make you do it.
Yeah.
How was that experience? I mean, you're still down south, so I feel like you know, you probably felt a little more comfortable than if you went across this country. But how was that going from Mississippi, not exactly the most running-centric place ever, to the University of Florida, where everyone is a great athlete, right?
Yeah. No, it was, for me, it was kind of like, I was always a Gator fan for many years before I went to UF, but I never actually thought about going to school there. Like, I always thought, like, I love Florida. I love Gator sports. Where did you think you were going to go? I just thought I was going to go to like a small school, like be on a good cross-country team, and somewhere where it was like a little bit more focused on academics. And Florida is a great school and like also has great sports, but I don't know what it was. I think I had just like put that on a pedestal in a weird way. And then I got a visit from the coach at UF, and I was like, hold on. First of all, I really liked the coach. I really liked the team when I took my official, and I was like, it almost seemed so obvious that I was going to go to Florida, but I was in this weird denial that like I had to be this like studious distance runner.
Right.
And so I was looking at all these schools that were a little bit more like the stereotypical like academic
inclined.
school.
Yeah.
And every time I went, it was just like something was a little off. And I think that was because throughout my high school experience, we had built a track team, and we finally like actually had a good track team in one state. And that took like years and years of building that program with my sisters and some of my classmates. Mm-hmm. And it was like a full track team, great 200 runners, great jumpers, great pole vaulters, great throwers. Like obviously we had a couple good distance runners, and I wanted that when I went to college. Like I did not want to be on a cross country team. I realized pretty quickly.
You don't like cross?
I knew right away, like when I got to UF and I saw the sprinters, and I could like drop like 3 or 4 names, but like some of the guys who were there training at the time, I'm just like I love track, so it was easy for me. I saw like Jeff Demps out there training. I saw Christian. I was like, this is where I need to be. Like I need to be at a school where everyone took it very seriously. There were pros showing up, doing their job, and I was like, that's just the environment. And Coach Holloway like sets the tone every day. So
what is that like? Now, everyone has, I can ask him 15 different people a Coach story, and everyone will give you a good one. What's yours?
I mean, Coach Holloway is just so kind and like has always made me feel so special. But first of all, he specifically only calls me Cory Ann, which when someone does that and it's like genuine, I know that they're like practically family to me. Yeah. So like I feel like Coach Holloway is like family. But one funny thing is like I had gotten 2 visits from the distance coach. Like he came to my home to try and convince me to go to Florida and like commit. And I was just being so stubborn. Like I was being really indecisive. I get on the phone with Coach Holloway one time. I walk outside, I get on the phone with him. Hi, Coach Holloway. Oh no, a B. I'm on the phone with him for like 3 minutes, and he gets my commitment like that, because he's just that kind of person. Like once I spoke with him, the trust and the love, and just like immediately was like, yeah, I'm going to Florida. I walk in the house, my parents are like, what was that about? And I'm like, oh, I just committed to Florida. They were like, what?
That was it?
That was it. First time I ever really even had like a real conversation with him. I was like, yeah. And I mean, there's a million stories like that with him, because after my junior year, I had like made my first team. I was considering going pro, and I remember I'm in Moscow, the elevator doors open, I see Coach Holloway. I know in the back of my head, like I have this offer to sign, and it's like I could just like get to my dream of being a pro runner. I see Coach Holloway and I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. Like I can't do that. I'm not ready. And he's just like, hey, Cory Ann. And I'm like, yeah, see, one more year.
I get that vibe from a number of different people, where he's very personable, but he's a people's person's coach. More so than like an athlete's coach, where you just only care about the specimen from an athletic perspective. Like I've always gotten the sense that he wanted to make everyone better people, and he only wanted good people around him.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, that's like, I would say that's like in the DNA of Florida track, because he's helping a lot of kids that like didn't necessarily grow up with like the easiest circumstances. But, you know, like you see that so much in the sport. I feel like there's a lot of mentorship in Florida track and field. I feel like there's a lot of, Coach Holloway, he looks out for you big time. So
now you had a chance to compete in a few junior world championships, a few, in my opinion, high-level championship experiences throughout your tenure at Florida. Is there any one that stuck out, or any year that you feel like you really broke out? Your senior year, obviously, you had a great year, but even before then, I would say you got very, very good very, very quickly. So is there any like big jump that you remember?
I mean, my freshman year was huge. Like for the first time I ran over an hour. I remember that distinctly. Like I was not a high mileage high schooler.
Yeah, what was that like? Because I remember the first time I ever ran.
Yeah, it was
80
really
minutes
hard.
Was the first long run. I remember saying, nah, bro, this is not it.
No, my coach Coach Morgan, he had to jog with me the last like 20 minutes or so, because I was like struggling. But so like I know that my fitness had changed when I was a freshman, and I made my first I guess, I don't know, it's hard to remember, but I wasn't making a youth team. It was like a junior Pan Am team or something, and like had won the like junior national championship in Eugene. I remember because Ashton Eaton interviewed me after the race, and I was like, oh my God.
Ashton Eaton.
But yeah, so there were some races like that were just like good indicators of where I was at in comparison to like people in my age group. And of course that translates well to college. But then like within a couple years, you're up there competing against the big girls. So I was like, yeah. But freshman year, I would say, I think I PR'd by like somewhere between like 6 and 10 seconds in the 15. I think I went from like a 4:25 at 1500 as a high schooler to like a 4:15 my freshman year or something. And of course the 10-second PR is like, that's a big jump. So
it's more than big.
Yeah, I went from like a good high schooler to a good collegiate in that year. So yeah, just shaving off time each year of college.
Now, by the time you got to your senior year, you had a chance to compete at the big boy, big girl USAs.
Yep.
You got third.
That was junior year, yep.
Yeah, how was the experience of now making a real world championship team? I think you had done a fair amount of junior worlds or junior championships. What was your first real like?
No, yeah. I think that I had like through doing NCAAs and also having done like the junior champs and whatnot, that did give me a pretty good indication of like what to expect. And admittedly, like something that I love is like a loud, excited crowd. Like it never has made me nervous. So I was like all about it. I got to Moscow and I remember Jenny Simpson was on the team with me. So they took 4 people that year because she was the previous world champ in the 15. So I remember she came to me before the prelim and was like, it's going to be a lot when we get out there. And I was kind of like, I appreciated her, but I was kind of like, I love it. Like, I'm good. Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't make it to the final, but I was having the time of my life. Yeah.
You graduate, you get a chance to turn pro. And I don't know if the people can see the kicks. Check those out. You've been, what's it, 2024? So it'll be 10 years.
Yeah,
You've been with the same brand for all 10 years.
I can't believe that.
New Balance. What went into the decision of New Balance? I think at the time, was Reebok an option? I'm sure Nike's.
Actually, yeah.
So what led to the decision to go New Balance? And over the last 10 years, New Balance today is not like what it was back then. Like now I would say like, New Balance is hot. Like it's real sexy now. 2014
New Balance was like, yeah, it was a little different. But I knew I had a good indication of how they treated their athletes for a few reasons. I was friends with Emma, so I knew like she was having a good experience. But more than that, I was living with Jen Lacaze, and she was originally New Balance. So my college roommate had signed with New Balance out of college. Okay. And so I was like seeing the gear, kind of getting an idea of like how they treated her. And as much as I don't want to like say, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but like I knew some brands weren't necessarily treating their athletes quite as well. And I had set my mind on it. And like there were a couple reasons why New Balance maybe wasn't the choice that many other people would have made. Like there were other contracts that I was going to make more money. There were other contracts where I would have lived somewhere that I was a little bit more familiar with. But like in my heart, I just was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I kind of had to go like a little out of my way. They were not chasing me. Like I knew that it was potentially like who I could sign with, but then I think that they thought I was going with another brand. And I like decided to go to Boston and like show face and be like, no, like I'm taking this very seriously. Like this brand is where I think that I belong. And thankfully they were like, they took that seriously and they understood and recognized like that I was coming at it from the right place. And yeah, I signed with New Balance. So it was like kind of an unusual, I feel like compared to a lot of the stories I hear of how people ended up with wherever they're at, it wasn't necessary. It was more me like advocating for myself. I'll never forget, actually, if you're familiar with New Orleans, Commander's Palace is this restaurant in New Orleans that's like kind of fancy. And I was out with my best friend and her family. They had like friends in town or something, and I got invited to this lunch, and I'm sitting there at like this one of the nicest restaurants in the city, and I get this call from my agent, and they're like, yeah, New Balance is like kind of backing out. And I'm like, may I please be excused? So I like go outside. I'm like in like, you know, whatever, a dress. I'm like, should I go there? Should I go to Boston? What should I do? So yeah, I ended up like buying a flight, going up, meeting with the coach. And I remember I sat down with Mark, and like I'm very thankful to Mark because he like took me seriously, and I told him like, I want to make teams, I want to win medals, like these are my goals. And yeah, it was kind of on him at that point to say like, I will coach Cory. Yeah, Mark Coogan. So it was kind of on him to be like, I'm going to coach Cory. Like I want her on the team. And at that point it was Abby D'Agostino, myself, and like a few other women. So that was really like the decision maker, was Mark deciding to coach me. And then I was there for 4 years, and it was going okay. I wouldn't say it was going badly or super well. I was like pretty much just stagnant.
You were in the mix.
I was there. I wasn't making US finals. I was pretty angry at myself. I was super like dissatisfied with my performances, but like I was trying to trust. And then, had to make a change. And here we are.
See, it's interesting because now, having gotten to know you for a while now, and knowing your personality and knowing your Southern grit, making world finals obviously is always like the goal. Winning is always the goal. But how did you feel going from high school athlete, where you probably, you were the best in your area, you were one of the best in the country. You get to a school where there are many great athletes, so there's a whole dynamic there. What was the dynamic going into a professional landscape where you needed to be a professional, but you're still also at this age where it's like, this is fun time, right? Like, what was that dynamic like? And then you still had to come back and compete on the world's greatest stage. Even if you didn't make the final, you're still representing the USA. So like, what was that dynamic in your 20s? Like your early 20s where you just, everything's fun and vibrant, but you need to be stuck to it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, running is fun. Like, and I guess I wasn't having fun for a short time there because I wasn't doing that well. So I started to, like, fill my time with other things, like, and that was me kind of, like, letting go a little bit. And I kind of have a hard time looking back on that period because I have, for so many years, I was like so sure of myself and so sure of my goals. But like I had this couple years, like 3 years there, where I had really like kind of let go. And like it's sad to admit because I was searching, like I kind of had let go of the dream. I was like, I don't know if it's gonna happen. Like I would never have said it out loud, but a little piece of me was like, I don't know. I was like questioning. And then
how do you get out of that? Because obviously we're years down the line now. We're still in the game. So how did you get yourself out of that?
Well, so I mean, honestly, I'll always be grateful to Emma and Joe because Joe and I knew each other from high school, and he and I have we are kind of alike in a lot of ways. And I think that there was a moment where they saw me kind of like not quite living up to my potential, and they like called me out on it, even though we weren't teammates. He wasn't coaching me. They were just like, what the hell was that about? And I was like, honestly, thanks for saying that, because I kind of needed to hear it. And so we had this funny, friendship where they would be like, that kind of sucked, like, are you good? And so that kind of snapped me out of it, because I still like I recognized that there were people who still like saw the potential in me. And obviously I respected the hell out of Emma and Joe, so that was really helpful to like hear it from them. I mean, my parents were giving me a little tough love, like being like, what are you doing? Because like clearly this environment isn't working for you. Right. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, but deep down, like there was this kind of like war within, but there was the side of me that was like, it's okay, maybe just let go a little bit. But then there was the other side of me that was like, come on, like you know what you're capable of in like your heart of hearts. And I also knew what I was like willing to give. Like I was willing to work. I was willing to like be coached by someone who like who believed in me to get me there, and her Joe. But yeah, so I feel like those finally, like I got back to my truth, like, which is me believing in myself, but I had to like make a huge change. And I knew I was going to have to move and like kind of restart somewhere else. And yeah, that's what I did. Like, but really I was lost for about a year because I didn't know where I was going to go in order to do that. Like, I was like, do I go back to my high school coach? Do I go back to Florida? Do I go? And I was having these doubts for like about a year. And I was like, maybe I'll move to Colorado. Like my high school coach lives there. And then kind of simultaneously is when Emma and Joe started Team Boss. And I was having enough self-doubt to think like, oh, but they wouldn't even want me. And then they did. So that's great.
Going through that, which thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So that when you know a person, it gets a little more emotional when you're listening to how beautiful it is when people actually get themselves through things.
Yeah.
So going through that, how much of that do you think, obviously I think it's without saying you have a gift, right? Like athletically you're gifted. How much of that is mental how much of the sport in that period was mental where you actually needed to get yourself out of that, but also force yourself to come back to a dream that you almost died out on?
Yeah.
And is that something that someone else that doesn't have the same gifts can do at the same time, right? Like from a relatability standpoint, I think everyone goes through something. I think everyone has to get themselves through something.
Mm-hmm.
But for you and for many others, like we rely on whatever those God-given gifts are, right?
Yeah.
Like we come back and we say, well, I know I was given this for a reason.
Totally.
Right? So
absolutely.
How do you go back and forth, right? What if you don't know that you're just happen to be a world-class athlete? Right? Like, what if you don't know, like, you happen to be a world-class chef, if I do say so myself, right?
I mean, it's a tough question. I think that, like, for me, it is exactly that. Like, I had this voice in my head that was, like, screaming at me. Even at the low points, like, I always had this voice in my head that was screaming at me. And it was just, like, self-belief that, like, even though I was kind of, like, pushing it away because I was kind of lost and I didn't know how to get to where I wanted to go, just, like, tuning into that. And yeah, you have to, like, believe in yourself more than anyone else. So, and it's exactly what you said. I really, since I was a kid, I have always felt like when I went for a run that I was, like, doing what I was meant to do, like, deeply. And so, yeah, I had just lost sight of it for a second, but
got back on the train.
You got to surround yourself with people who know you well enough to remind you. And then also you do have to, like, protect at all costs. If you ever feel that voice in your head, like, when you're doing something that you love that, like, tells you that that's what you're meant to do, I feel like I have always really protected that part of my mindset and my soul. But yeah, there was a moment where I was kind of, like, putting it aside, but it was still there. It was still there. It
was dormant. You just had to wake it up.
Yeah.
Shout out Joe. Shout out Emma.
Yeah, very grateful.
So, we got out of a rut. We got our head in the right space where we need to go. We got our legs moving the right way. And we got ourselves to the Olympic trials in 2021, technically. 2020 games, but 2021. How did you feel going into that year? You had a few years where you didn't race as well as you wanted. Your places didn't look anywhere near as good as you knew your potential could be. So by the time you got to the 21 games, how did you feel? What was your confidence level? Where was your headspace at?
I think it was, like, perfect timing, and, like, obviously I'm never going to be like, thank God COVID happened, but, like, 2020 was, like, a vacuum for me, like, for many of us, and I just, like, focused on training that whole year. And admittedly, like, I kind of had no business being confident because 2019 I was disqualified, so I wasn't in the final.
Right.
2018 I didn't make the final. 17 I was injured. 16 whatever. So, like, if you look back at the years before, I hadn't made the final in years.
Exactly.
And 2021 I just rolled up, like, I know what training I've been doing. I know what my fitness says. But honestly, I was, like, blindly confident to Joe's coaching and the people who I was around, like, training with Emma, training with Aisha, training with Dom. I just was like, yeah, I'm meant to make the team. It was that simple.
It was that simple.
Literally, if I believe in my coach and they tell me, like, follow this person and you're going to be good and you can do it, like, the best thing for me is that Joe does the thinking when it comes to that stuff. And, like, I trust him. So that's what he told me. And I was like, okay.
This is the rebirth of Cory McGee, ladies and gentlemen. A 2020 year. This is, what is it? Beyonce during the day, and then she's Sasha Fierce on stage.
Yeah.
I feel like that was your Sasha Fierce move.
Pretty much.
So you got out there, you got second at the trials.
Yeah, second to Ellie.
Got a chance to become an Olympian. I was speaking with Emily Sisson, asking her the same question. I'm asking you, what does it mean to represent the U.S., right? Like, obviously, we got a breath of that when you travel and you already feel like, hey, I'm repping the U.S. every time I step outside my door, especially when I leave the country. So what did it feel like to actually don the USA jersey, the red, white, and blue?
Yeah.
What did it mean to be an Olympian?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. I mean, like, when I put myself back in that moment, that was, like, dream come true. Especially like so many people kind of look at the Tokyo Olympics and like brush it off, but I feel the exact opposite. I think that like that was when we needed the Olympics the most, like
Right.
the world coming together and everything that the Olympic spirit sort of is meant to represent. So for me, I took it really seriously. I was like, you know, it's about my performance, but more than anything, it's about me like being a representation of the US in like a really weird time for the whole world. Yeah, and like kind of just celebrating what people can do. So yeah, I was like, that's my part. That's what I'm here for. And so I have to be the best I can be. And Tokyo was, you know, not perfect for me because I fell in the semis, but I think that like my response to it was just to like be the best I could be and kind of focus on like, you're just part of the whole. So yeah, that was my mindset. But yeah, like huge amount of honor and love for what I do. It makes me like get kind of choked up. So yeah, I take it very seriously.
Going back to the years previously, we just alluded to it was challenging. Do you feel like making it to the games solidified all of that pain you went through, right? All of that suffering, all of the challenge, right? Like, do you feel like just being in that moment, fall or not fall, you just accomplished something that most of humanity doesn't get a chance to experience, right? So
yeah.
How do you feel like moving after that? I think a lot of times people start to talk about post-Olympic Games depression, right? Like, how did you feel getting there, reaching that high, and then realizing, I want that again. I want to get back.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that that's very real. Like I feel like any benchmark moment in a person's life, like there's so much happiness. So like the Olympics is just like pure joy and happiness. Even if it doesn't, for me, I would say like, I know this isn't for everyone, but even though it didn't go perfectly according to like what I would have wanted, like of course I wanted to be in the final, but like I wanted to race my way to the final. And yeah, there's definitely like a down moment after it. I for sure experienced that. You kind of get back and you want to like share in the joy of it with your friends and family. And I would say like if there's one way that Tokyo Olympians got robbed, it's that like we didn't get to have our friends and family there, but like I came home and kind of wanted to like relive it with my friends and family, and everyone, you know, like naturally they were already on to the next thing, and I was like, but remember last week? And so that was tough, but yeah, I mean, I don't even know. It was the best, but it was it's a roller coaster like anything else. Everything's a roller coaster, I feel like, especially when you're playing with such extreme emotions. And like, it is funny. I think back to my last day in Tokyo, walking through the village, and like I was injured. My knee and ankle on my right leg were like done after when I fell and then raced on it. But like, I just had this weird moment, like looking around and everyone was hurt. I was like, what is up with this place? It's like all these like people who are generally in really good shape, like athletic, muscular, young, toned, attractive people, like all walking around with like a boot on crutches, in a wheelchair. And I was like, this is depressing.
It's
like
the games, baby.
The last day at the Olympics is, yeah, it's cool and it's beautiful and it's awesome, but it's kind of, there's some sadness for sure. Like all my friends were hurt. Like Jen, one of my best friends, was hurt. Emma, one of my close friends, like everyone left. We were just like, that sucked.
But you rebounded. You got up.
Yeah.
You got back on the horse, and somehow we're looking for another bright year, another bright day.
Definitely. It's worth it. I mean, it's all worth it. Yeah.
So we've got a fun year.
Mm-hmm.
We just had a fun year. You made it to another World Championships, Budapest. Somehow we ended up going to a museum in Budapest.
We did.
Shout out Salvador.
Underground museum.
Yeah, shout out Salvador Dali. How do you think last year's experiences is prepping you for another Olympic trials?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, this is a fun one. Everyone's kind of gearing up. It doesn't look like a lot of people are putting too much out too early, just kind of sharpening things, then going back to the lab. So what do you think you took away from last games and then making it World Championships the year before Olympic Games?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest things like for the last few years that I've taken from it is like, it's so easy to focus on being the best in your event in the US. And like, I just have to constantly remind myself to think bigger. And I think that requires having experience at the international level. So like having the Olympic experience and like world championship experience under my belt, I can like stop myself when I start to fixate on like top three. And I can think like, of course, that's going to be really hard. 1500 is no joke. There's a lot of great competitors, but I can stop myself and remind myself like, but beyond that, I can mentally prepare for like, what am I going to do if I make it to Paris? And you can't really put the cart before the horse and like think like that if you haven't been there, because it's almost hard to envision it. But I just have a better ability to like think ahead into the season. And like, it's not like I'm just like gassing myself up mentally. I'm like, no, like I have to think like that in order to like not get to Paris and be like, and now what, you know, like, because it doesn't end at USA's. Like you have to, and I would say that's like advice to, you know, someone when they make their first team or whatever. You have to like, if you believe you can do it, you can't just stop there. You have to be thinking like, and what am I going to do when I get there? So.
Well, that's a beautiful segue, because I was going to ask, for a lot of the youth in today's sports, a lot of it is just glitz and glam of making anything, right? No matter what the sport is, whether it's track and field, basketball, soccer, whatever. There are a lot of more pro-am teams. There's a lot of club teams, right? So making it to a championship happens at all ages now, and there's a lot of media attention at every one of these championships. So you almost get a sense, or I get a sense from afar, that youth feel more amped at a lot of these championships. So how do you teach someone or remind people, how do you remind yourself without also forgetting the fact that, hey, I've got to get to USA's healthy. I've got to compete at USA's with the best in the country. But then after that, training yourself for a whole year, a whole 4 years, when I get to Paris, right, when I get to the next thing, I've got to be ready for that level of competition, right? Like I think there's a balance there that it seems like you and the rest of Team Boss and Joe, you guys play very well. Where you're not just looking to show up at USA's. You're not just looking to show up at states. You're looking to show up at states and compete at the state meet, right? So how do you balance the two? Like, are you just uber consistent, right? Like I know that's a part of it, but what else do you have to think about?
Well, in terms of the actual training that goes into that, I literally just follow whatever I'm told to do. So
that's part of it.
I don't think about like the technical side. I don't think like, well, what are we going to do? I have to race 3 times at USA's and then I have a month and then whatever. Like Joe can figure that part out and I'll just like be the vessel that does the training. So that makes it really easy for me. So that's goes back to trusting your coach. But then in terms of just like the actual like mentality that requires, I think it's like part patience, part having the right people around you and the right support. But more than anything, just being like, I call myself a goldfish because like, I know you probably didn't expect me to say that, but like. I
knew you were going to say goldfish.
Mostly I say
beta? You didn't say beta.
No, I'm a goldfish in that like I have short-term memory loss, like I choose to. So it's like, I don't think like, but I just raced 3 times. Like I'm kind of tired. I'm just like, no. First of all, we do hard workouts like multiple times a week.
Right.
Like, so I know I can race 3 times in a week. Like I'll be okay. I'm going to live. But also it's just like creating the right mentality, of course, but also like not sitting there and like fixating on it and just kind of like letting go of that and being on to the next thing. I mean, of course I can derive confidence from it. I can be like, well, I raced 3 times at USA's and I did pretty well. Now I have to just do that again. And like, even though the competition does ramp up at Olympic or world champ level, like it is a little bit more depth. It's not like extremely different from the US structure of racing. So I really appreciate that like the US kind of prepares us for that. So I cherry pick how to be confident from it, but I also like actively choose to kind of like, I used to have this thing with my college teammate and I still use it. Shout out Sean, but it's like, set it and forget it. You know, the commercial. So that's like my mentality. Put that on a t-shirt. Set it and forget it. But that's like the mentality. You just have to be like, okay, I'm gonna.
Is that hold on, pause. Is that a play from The Hills?
No, it's like a infomercial. No, I don't know, but it's an infomercial for like a little easy bake oven thing or something. And that was like the whole slogan. So that's what I tell myself. I'm just like, and then I'm put that one away and then on to the next thing. Because it's like so easy to get in that mindset of like, USA's was so hard. We had to race 3 times and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no.
You're prepared for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting us ready.
So, I like rapid fire. And I'm very excited because your mind is a marvel. All right, you ready?
I'm ready. I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
All right, don't forget we're friends. First question, black or white?
Well, I guess white.
Wrong guess. Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Root beer or Dr. Pepper?
Dr. Pepper.
East Coast root beer or Mississippi root beer?
The blue one.
There is no blue one, first of all. We're just going to start and end there. What is the best shoe New Balance has ever given you?
I love the 327 Casablanca. That was my first like cool collaboration, so I got to go with that one.
How do you prepare for race day like look? What's your race day look?
Oh, hairspray is important to me. I don't like when my hair is in my face when I'm racing. And then honestly, I got to use a little self tanner on the tan lines.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. Pre-race meal.
Day of.
Or
honestly, night before I'll eat like, really it just depends on what I'm craving, and rounds. I kind of have a strategy, but usually the day before I just keep it simple, like chicken or fish or something.
Pasta or pizza?
Pasta. I'm not a pizza fan. I don't like it.
So on the pasta or pizza, I had the esteemed pleasure of having Cory McGee's cooking this week. And I'm going to ask Miss Darling Shauna in a moment when we're done how she learned to teach you. But from a cooking perspective, once you're done with your running career, do you think you're going to go into the kitchen and become a world-class chef?
Oh, no.
It's possible.
I have like 4 or 5 recipes up my sleeve. I'm not like...
Yeah, but if you know those 4 or 5, you've got a book. It's kind of...
Yeah, I just stay in my lane.
After you're done running, what's the next thing?
I just want to like see my family more.
Just see them?
I just want to spend time with my family.
Well, you do a lot from a training perspective. You're away from everyone.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're almost away from PJ.
I'm away from PJ. I just want to like be with the people I love and like not like stressed out about.
That's fair.
Yeah, I have this like horrible tendency of being like 2 more days, 3 more days. Like I just want to like go be with them and not be sad that I'm leaving.
Stressed out about it.
Yeah.
So, last thing, one of the last things. We just had a conversation about upbringing and environment and damn near nature versus nurture. How much of your total well-being, how much of you as a person now, Cory McGee in 2024, was that a lot of talent that got you here?
Oh, no.
Was it just mental, just fortitude? Or was it something different? Do you think it was something spiritual? I'm going to say, like I said before, you are a very beautiful mix of both mom and dad.
Thank you.
You knowing your father being very stern and very militant and disciplined, and your mother is very disciplined and stern as well, but she's got this vibrant spunk about her that just radiates this energy. If I just think about all of those adjectives, that makes up Cory McGee. You throw in a little extra spice, and there's just Mississippi Southern Belle. So what do you think is the biggest contributor to where you are today as an athlete and even more so as a person?
Well, it's like we talked about. I do agree, like, if my dad wasn't my dad, if my mom wasn't my mom, like, there's no chance. Just their personalities. And, you know, I recognize it every day. I'm like, wow, that was so Shauna of me. Or like, wow, I'm this exact same person as my dad. But I think, like, the personality part of, like, for me, what got me there is, like, I'm just really driven, and I think that like that does come from my parents, but I mean there's no denying that like I do feel like I also see things about myself like where I was meant to be a runner. Like I feel that in my bones. Like I'm like, yeah, I always wanted to do it. Like it was always like my companion. If something was like, if I was just having a tough day, if I was like a little overwhelmed, I was like, yeah, running is my thing.
What does driven mean to you?
Like even on the days where I just did not feel like going for a run, I would always do it. I will always go and do my job. Even if I'm like this is the worst day, like a million things are going wrong, like I'm always gonna do what I have to do.
It's discipline.
I'm on it. I'm doing my thing.
It's the
I don't
McGee
cut
way.
corners. I do not cut corners. No.
That is the McGee way. Right, Cor?
Yeah.
Well, we're in 2024. It's always going to be stressful, but you have a wedding.
Yeah.
You do have a life outside of running.
I do.
So I wish you all the best this year.
Thank you.
I'm sure I will see you very soon in the coming weeks and coming months. But if I don't, good luck at the wedding.
Thank you.
From a Paris perspective, you know I'm always in your corner. I'll probably be the one screaming with the camera the loudest when that day comes. If you decide that you don't want to run track at Paris, what other sport are you playing at the games this year?
Oh my God, my other sport that I'm like really interested in is a winter sport.
Don't say bobsled. Curling?
Yeah.
But why curling?
I just gotta try that
I feel
someday.
like everybody says curling.
I gotta try it. But if I could be good at any other sport,
Well,
it
PJ's
would be
from Boston. I'm
Yes.
sure they have like a curling league somewhere.
I probably could find that. I'm just like interested in it. But if I was gonna go do any other sport, like if I could be great at any other sport, for sure tennis. But if I was probably able to be an Olympian at any other sport, I'm gonna say if I had like trained for it, I think I would have been good at biathlon. But wait, is that the one? The one where they shoot?
Like ski shooting and
Yeah.
running?
And then don't they like have to get from point A to point B?
Yeah, I don't know what that's called.
That sport, because my mom was like the state champion in California in trap shooting. She's very good at it.
Yeah, this is starting to make a lot more sense.
And I think I probably could have figured that one out. She was good at that.
So make sure we know not to put a
No, don't
Airsoft.
mess with Shauna.
gun in Cory McGee's hands.
She's pretty good with the shotgun.
Southern Belle, baby. Southern Belle. All right, Cor, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you for a few recipes once we're done, so when you
Happily.
leave, I can continue to eat jambalaya.
Okay.
All right, we're out.
That's it.
If you haven't already, please give a follow, like, comment, subscribe to not only me, but to all those letting the lactic build. We're in this together. Peace.